In this video, I'm going to work out the intrinsic value very quickly of 20 different stocks using Benjamin Graham's intrinsic value calculator. And along the way, I'm going to explain why this can only take you so far in your stock analysis. Warren Buffett warned us in one of his shareholder letters to beware of geeks bearing formulas. While he was definitely having a go at people like me who love to lean on different valuation tools and models to help guide them in their investing. In the last couple of weeks on this channel, we've already covered the dividend discount model, Peter Lynch's fair value model, and the discounted cash flow model. And I still have one or two other videos that I want to put out over the next couple of weeks. While there are many criticisms of each of these individually, I don't think you can disregard them altogether. I still think there's a huge value in doing these exercises for any investment that you're looking at. If you're starting out, the biggest problem that you often have is there's thousands of different companies that you could possibly invest in. How do you whittle that down to a handful that you can actually just go and do some proper analysis on? Well, using one or more of these valuation tools could at least get you off on the right start. The problem is though, some of these calculations actually take a bit of time to do, especially the DCF model. But the beauty of Benjamin Graham's intrinsic value calculator is how simple it is. I'm sure you are all well aware of who Benjamin Graham is at this stage. He is most famous for his book, The Intelligent Investor. If you're completely new to investing, it's a great read. It will teach you a lot of the basics and the fundamentals that you're going to need. This is the formula that you're going to have to use to calculate Benjamin Graham's intrinsic value, and it's a relatively simple one to do. Let's have a look at some of the inputs that you're going to need. Firstly, you just need the earnings per share of the company. Then in the brackets here, you see 8.5 plus 2G. 8.5 here represents the assumed PE ratio of a company that has no growth whatsoever. Then your G here represents the estimated growth of that company over the next 7 to 10 years. Then the last two inputs take into account interest rates. 4.4 here represents the average yield on AAA rated corporate bonds in 1962, and Y represents the current average yield on AAA rated corporate bonds right now. All of these inputs are very straightforward to attain, except for G here, which is also probably one of the biggest criticisms of this model. Nobody has a crystal ball. Most analysts can't even predict the growth over the next quarter, let alone the next 7 to 10 years. So much can change over that period of time. That's why you need to take any intrinsic value that you calculate for any company using this formula with a pinch of salt. There are so many other very important factors about a company that you need to take into account, and a lot of them are qualitative and they cannot be taken into account by a simple formula. Many people online also argue that Graham never intended this formula to be used in the way it is often today. His intention was to highlight just how wrong analysts get it with their growth forecasts, and you could use this formula on historic data retrospectively to prove that these analysts routinely get it wrong. But as I am going to show you now, if you use a bit of common sense, I think this can be something that can be utilized as a stock screener. And here is why I think Benjamin Graham's intrinsic value calculator is so useful, because it is so easy to set up a Google Sheets template, and most of it you can pretty much automate. So in that way you can scale it up very easily. So I have 20 companies here, but you could easily scale this up to 100 or more. As you'll see here, I have the current share price automatically feeding in with the Google Finance formula. You can do the same for the earnings per share. Your PE ratio of a no growth company is always going to stay at 8.8. The 7 to 10 year growth rate is the only input that you're going to have to do a little bit of work around, whether you come up with a growth rate yourself or you take a look at what the analysts are saying. And personally, that's what I do. I take a look at what the analysts are saying and I try and pare it back a little bit and be a little bit more cautious. Your last two inputs here for the interest rates then, the 4.4 is not going to change, and once you get the current average yield on AAA rated corporate bonds, that's going to be the same for each stock that you analyze. So you can create something simple here that pops out the intrinsic value. That will tell you the potential growth based on the intrinsic value versus the current share price. Then you can add in a margin of safety for an extra layer of security, and that will give you kind of a safe entry point. And if the current share price is actually below this entry point, the highest price that you're willing to pay for that stock, then at that point you can go and do a lot further research on that company. So for example, for the 20 companies that I put into this template, 6 of them came up as potentially worth doing some further research on, including Bank of America, say Ryanair, Disney, Caterpillar and NetApp. What my next step then would be to take these companies and use the other valuation models such as your DCF and Peter Lynch's fair value model and the dividend discount model if it's applicable, and see if there is a bit of consistency here in terms of are they all saying that these companies are currently undervalued. But just to stress again, you're going to have to do a lot more work than just using a few valuation tools. You are going to have to dig a lot deeper on these companies to decide if they are actually worth investing in. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hope you found it useful. If you like this type of content, check out some of the other videos that I did recently on these types of models. Let me know down in the comment section as well if you use any tools like this, and if you have any thoughts on them, I'll be interested to know.